Alright, here are the bits and pieces so far. I did some of this on a drill press and some of it on a lathe, and I won't go into the particulars. That kind of a thing is really shop dependent. How you're set up, what you're comfortable with, what you're trying to accomplish. These videos are not intended to be a machinist's course, so to speak. They're assume that that type of information is available separately. If you want to learn lathe techniques and so on, then you can get that kind of information elsewhere on the internet or someplace else. So here's what I've come up with so far. Now this hole here is the same size as the flared portion here. Remember, we're trying to duplicate this guy within reason. So the hole in the end of this and the hole in the end of that are the same, so that when this goes in, it holds the base of the stem in the classical Scandinavian style. Now this is, you'll notice, is considerably larger in diameter. Well, here's the sleeve made of Delrin that was cut from a length of just rod stock, and the end of that has been beveled so that when it's inserted all the way to the bottom, the drill that was used to create that hole, the angle of the tip of that has been copied on the end of that tube so that there's not a gap down there. Okay, so that recess is the same depth as that, give or take a little bit. I might trim the tube just a little bit more. And then the stem fits in here. Now it turns out I actually measured the stem, and it, like a lot of older ones, it swells, it's squashed at the end, and it's larger in diameter toward the base. So that needs to be recut and made square again so that we don't run into problems with the new fit. But that's a separate issue, not too difficult to deal with. Anyway, that's going to go in there. Now, something has to be done that's fairly dramatic. I don't particularly like to do it, but there really isn't much choice in this case. The original had the mortise extend into the base of the shank from this horn piece, so that the mortise itself goes down to approximately where the top of that white stripe of tape is. Now, that's a problem in a number of ways I won't go into, but it means that what we have to do is now, when on the new piece of horn, we're going to have to make it about 1/8 of an inch longer than the original, and then reduce the length of the shank by about the same amount so that the overall length of the pipe remains the same. Again, that's without diagram, without a chalkboard and so on, it would be very difficult to explain just why that's necessary, but in this case it is. Also, there's a significant chip that's been, when this broke originally, that came out of there. So that's a little payback, so to speak, or one benefit of shortening the shank length is that we'll be getting rid of that. Otherwise we'd have to put some kind of a fill or something in there, and that's kind of ugly. So it makes me feel a little bit better about shortening the overall length of this. So this is going to be cut to length after turning it on a lathe to get very close to this shape, and then the whole thing's going to be glued together, and then it will be separately reamed. The airway will be reamed, and a piece of stainless steel tubing will be cut to length and inserted using a special tool that designed for the task. Now, actually cutting the shank down is a tricky business in that you don't get a second shot at it. If you mess that up, there's no going back. So rather than describe it, I'm actually going to show this to you. There is a technique where you can use a disc sander in a highly accurate way. As long as you understand the geometry involved, it will really help you when trying to shorten things and square them up and not jack things up. It's easier to see it than to describe it. So I'll set the camera up near the disc sander and show you that how this gets cut off. The reason for the white tape stripe here is as a depth gauge. We want to bring this shank down to the top edge of this white here. Now that plastic ring that's on here, that's a 1/16 of an inch. That's going to go, and then about 1/16 inch of the wood itself. And then we're going to add the 1/8 of an inch onto this new piece that we're attaching, so that overall the pipe will be the same. So that is it. This is big league stuff here. It's in the sense that true reconstruction, the word pipe repair runs the full gamut from, getting out a few dents and shining them up, on to total reconstruction in this type of manner. Very fussy business, but this is the most fun of all the kinds of repairs that somebody like me does, simply because the other ones you've done them so many times that when something like this comes along, it's not as common. More fun for that reason. So anyway, that is it, and I'll fire it up again near the disc sander, and we'll take down the length of the shank and then move ahead.